feel like the White Sox series certainly amplified it because they're having a rough year. You guys lose 2 of 3. The angst, the frustration, it's been building, I think. We went through last year with the last place finish, but what's your sense of fan frustration as we sit here now?
Oh, it's definitely high. I mean, we're in last place in the Central. We all believe, and I think even our fans believe, that this is a better team than this. When you just look at it, there's some bright spots on the team. I mean, Mason Wynn, who we were all like, oh, God, he's the key. If he can hit 250, play great D, we'll be fine. Well, I mean, he's done great, and then some other guys have tailed off. And I think the approach to our offseason pitching issues, which were the key problem last year, largely have worked out. I like our bullpen, so there's some positives there. It's just, early on, a lot of the guys aren't hitting at the same time. And, we've lost some close games and weird games. So I remain optimistic but concerned. I think that wouldn't be fair to say it's not, it's I don't think it's panic button right now, but it's like, come on, guys, we're better than this, and we should be able to climb into this race.
Are you guys always sort of balancing, hey, we have had a great run. If you point to all the moments in the last 20 years, there's a lot of winning that took place, but a lot of fans are like, well, I don't care about that. I care about tonight. I care about tomorrow. How do you balance that as an organization that loves its past, that celebrates it, and yet has to deliver today, tomorrow?
I think it's just the reality of pro sports that it's what have you done for me lately for the most part. I mean, if you look at any given season, that's the most important one. Not last season, not next season. It's this season is the most important season right now. And so if you're not in a great competitive situation, you're going to hear it. And I don't have any problem with that. I try not to, look at all of it, but I try to be aware of it, so, and we all are. So it's no fun when you're, getting mostly negative comments or you should have done this or this is what you should do, rather than, hey, I love how you're doing your job. We'd much would prefer that. And when the team wins, even the process on the business side gets easier with selling tickets and driving enthusiasm and promotional responses and all kinds of stuff like that. But, we are where we are, and we're going to make the best of it and get this thing turned around.
And from last year's last place finish, it seems though ticket sales coming into this year were still relatively good. Was that the same corporate-wise too? Was there much of a drop-off?
There was definitely a drop-off. I think that, you start to realize, really who your hardcore, loyal fans are, and even become even more appreciative of that support when the team isn't playing well. But, I think just the casual fans that are looking for that experience just based on performance on the field, they're the ones that maybe are on a wait-and-see basis. The thing I chuckle about is when I see sometimes comments, we got to, not show up to send a message that this isn't acceptable to the owners. I find that one somewhat illogical reasoning because, we just turn this revenue machine into a payroll machine. I mean, that's what this is, this business. I mean, we try to drive as much revenue as we can. And then it gets put on the field for the most part. We have to obviously put on all sorts of other expenses. We've talked about the stadium earlier and all kinds of other things. But you know what I'm getting at is we take those we try to and it. I'll just give you another way of saying the same thing. If you look at the revenue rankings in MLB, for the most part, with a few rare exceptions, your ranking in revenue translates into your ranking in payroll. And, that's been true of the Cardinals, for many, many years. And, we have been sort of around the 10th out of 30th, plus or minus, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that's where our payroll's been. And so you kind of, it matches for a reason. And so we try to drive additional revenue in every way that we can so that we can climb the rankings of the payroll, because we know that there's a correlation between payroll and winning, not direct, We also have to, and there are low market teams that have performed very well. And it depends on where you are in the cycle of competing, right? We don't want to have to tank for 5 years to get good draft picks and do it the way, the Astros did it or the Cubs did it or whomever. We'd like to be competitive every year. We've shown that can work if we make good decisions.
All right, next,
and go from there.
And I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I was going to say next time we'll do the deep dive on the TV, which is a whole nother. That's like a 3-hour conversation. That's something that also ties into the revenue, which I know you guys are hoping maybe at the end of this year or going into next year you'll have some sort of rollout or at least a new plan for that.
Yeah, that's a big topic because there's a lot of disruption going on, and we're sort of right in the middle of all that because we're one of the Bally's teams. The parent of Bally's, Diamond Sports, is in bankruptcy, and we're watching that very closely because it could affect our TV rights revenue, and basically it could affect where we are in that ranking of all clubs on total revenue. And that ultimately reflects in payroll, not necessarily short term, but over time.
And the stadium renovations, give us a timeline here, because we're in year 19, which, by the way, when you tell people that, they sort of freak out. Like year 19 for Busch Stadium 3, it has flown by. But what is the timeline right now in terms of things you need to fix at some point?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it almost seems surreal because I keep sometimes calling it the new stadium, but 19, I don't think you can call it new anymore. Well, first of all, I mean, our philosophy is that we want to make sure that this stadium is around for, indefinitely, right? So every year we put, $8 to $10 million in capital into it, and a few million additional into operating expense type items, little things. And we don't ever want to have to replace it, at least in my lifetime. So that's the premise. When you look, though, at where we are in sort of the life cycle, it started kind of with Camden Yards, and, probably 2/3 of the teams have stadiums in this cycle, if you will. When you get up on 20 years, it starts to, every situation is different, but it starts to get to where there's some big things that need to happen, and so, things like replacing all the seats, things like, HVAC systems, chillers. We have, a big office renovation that has to happen, although that's kind of maybe not fan-facing. And then, our concessions probably need a full overhaul. We've got, some advancements in technology that we need to work on. Wi-Fi systems need upgrade. I mean, you get the idea. I mean, I could keep going on and on, but there are a lot of things that are big ticket. And when you've got a building that's 1.5 million square feet, I mean, just replacing the light bulbs can be $1 million proposition.
And I remember when the Blues were going through this enterprise, Chris Zimmerman said, a lot of it's not real sexy. You don't tell your fans, hey, we got a new heating system. Like you don't see a lot of the guts of the building. Are you able to, even in your walking around, sense like, hey, it's aging, or you're doing stuff every year. So what's the current health of the building, would you say?
I'd say the current health is good. We are nowhere. We're certainly better than the average stadium at 18.5 years, for sure. Because of, like I said, it's our own house. Like, you keep your house in good shape when you own it. When you rent it, maybe you don't as much. So we really believe in the long-term need to keep ahead of that curve. We don't want to fall behind on anything so much that the cost to repair it gets out of control. So anyway, that's the theory, and we believe it's a great configuration. It can do what we need it to do. It's in the right place, downtown St. Louis. Plus, we've got Ballpark Village. We want to continue to invest in that. So yeah, we're not going anywhere, but we got to be cognizant of these timelines.
I think we all sort of became lease experts, or, with the Dome and the Rams. What is the current? You guys own it. What are the current? Is the math? Is it, when will it be paid off, or what are the bonds? I'm just saying, like with the Dome, it was always 30 years, 30 years. Is there any math similar to that for you guys?
Yeah, but there's a few things that are kind of moving parts related to that. The city's primary contribution, or pretty much their only contribution to the stadium financing for us back 20 years ago, was the abatement of the admissions tax. We pay sales tax just like everybody else on all our transactions. But then there was that additional 5% that was tacked on, which was pretty egregious. I don't know when that first started, but I think back in the 60s, before all this competition on stadiums around the country. Anyway, the city abated that for a long period of time, and that helped us finance it privately. And what happened is the taxes grew so much because of the new revenues and the good teams and everything, that the city actually receives more direct tax revenue now by a lot than they did before they abated that tax. And so I'm sure that would be part of something, but that's speculative. I mean, we really don't have a plan, and that's why this conversation is probably a few years premature, because the RFT did this article that, the article title was "Cardinals Seeking Public Funding," which is just a lie. I mean, we're not out there seeking anything. I don't even know what the full project is going to look like. We're just embarking on that process of determining those big items, the sequence of those items, and then the next step would be, how we would finance it. So all of that's a little premature, but the cities was that tax abatement. The state did some infrastructure work for us, and the county gave us a loan that came through the LCRA, and which is accruing interest, and we owe that back to them. So, that was it in terms of the financing, and that's why I say confidently that we financed it 90% privately, which we did.
And I think you get pushback from some people on that. Oh, no, there's government money. But so as you break it down, it was 90% out of the Cardinals' pocket, and the other 10 were, what would you call it, government arrangements or agreements?
Yeah, like with the state, we were able to tap into at the state were things and programs that any business would have been able to tap into. There were some brownfield environmental tax credits to clean up the old bus lot. And then MoDOT, who was going to repair or replace that on-ramp on 8th Street, it was in their long-term plan. They fast-forwarded that work to move that ramp, which we needed moved, and replace it to the south, moving, that ramp that goes up and towards the east onto Highway 64. They fast-forwarded that project that was on their agenda anyway, and that was the state's contribution. So, similar to any business that would invest in downtown, that's kind of what we tapped into, those programs.
And are you currently in sort of a studying phase as to what you need to get done? I mean, is there a timeline in your mind, even like, hey, a year from now, we'll say, here's the plan, or in 2 years? Or do you have a rough idea?
Yeah, I would say in a year we're going to have a plan. And then at that point, we'll try to figure out, the best way to enact that plan, whether that's, some tweaking of the arrangements that we have with the public entities, or whether that's some other idea, is too early to tell. But, we just want to make sure that we do our responsible duty of making sure this facility doesn't fall behind. It stays on, one of the top facilities in the league, and that, we view it as an investment in the long-term viability of the Cardinals in downtown.
And going back, I remember the famous Mark Lamping press conference. I still give him a hard time. That I said, they're not moving to Collinsville, Mark, but there was a little bit of a fight there. How was it a difficult process to get it done, like the agreement that does exist?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you're doing public financing stuff, public-private partnerships, there's a lot of brain damage. There's a lot of work that is unpleasant, from the perspective of, going out there and trying to get these deals done. I just think that fans should recognize that in this case, and I know that the studies are out there that public funding of stadiums, on a net basis is, not, it's just moving money around, or it's not additive, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of academic work out there. But when you look at that in aggregate, you have to look at the teams themselves, the actual deals. And when you look at the deal that we did, it ended up that the direct tax revenues, and I'm not talking about like multiplier effects and spin-off effects and whatever else good happened, or even Ballpark Village for that matter. The direct taxes that the city receives now are more than what they were before the new ballpark, and the same is true of the state by an even wider margin. And that's because revenues grew, salaries and payrolls grew. Players pay the earnings tax. Even when Shohei Ohtani comes here for 3 games, he pays a little fraction of that $70 million a year to the city for that 1% earnings tax. I don't think people realize that. So the Cardinals being downtown is a very important economic driver of direct tax revenues to the city, and those have grown over the years, even with their contribution of the admissions tax abatement.
So have you had any conversations with City Hall at this point? Is that premature?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I have a great relationship with the mayor. She's wants to catch up soon, and there'll be no asking of anything because, like I said, we're very early in this process. Just kind of a level set of kind of the process we're about to embark on, and we've got a good relationship with the city and the county, and so I'm not necessarily loving or looking forward to this process, but actually it's a healthy one for everybody because we all have to take a step back and say, all right, this was good public policy for the city to do when we did it, and for the state and for the county. And now we've got a little bit of a different sort of situation. Nobody's threatening anything. We're just saying these buildings have a life cycle, and we're at a certain point on that life cycle. We've got work to do. And I think we'll figure it out. I mean, there's enough of a economic engine here that you don't have to get super creative to figure out how to make it work and to keep it going.
And the Post-Dispatch did a good job on a lot of the numbers, the math that you're talking about, if folks want to see it. Also mentioned the comp in Milwaukee with the Brewers Stadium, which I think opened in around 2000. So they're a good, 5-6 years ahead maybe. What have they done? And is that a reasonable comp as to what stadiums need after 20-plus years?
Yeah, I don't even really know yet if it's a reasonable comp because, I just heard them publish a giant number, several hundred million. Baltimore was an even bigger number than that, which they secured from I guess the state or the county. I forget which entity, but and I just don't know what their project list is. Milwaukee has a dome that's good and bad. It's good in the sense that it keeps all of your interior spaces a little fresher for longer. Bad in that anything you got to fix on the dome is very expensive. So Camden would be a good comp in the sense of our stadiums are similar, but they started way before us. I mean, I think they opened in 90 or something, 91, 92, something like that. So they're almost a whole cycle or a half cycle ahead of us with these renovations that tend to last, 20 plus years when you do them.
Bill DeWitt III, the Cardinals president, our guest on the topic. He doesn't really want to be a topic, but it became a topic because somebody wrote about it, then somebody else wrote about it. That's sort of the news cycle we live in. What are the stadium trends? Are less seats becoming a thing, and you guys have done that where more amenities, even the right field foul pole where there's more casual standing around. What are the trends with, fans that you've had to sort of adapt to?
Oh gosh, over the years we've modified this ballpark a lot. I mean, in some respects, I wish we had made it out of clay so we could just keep moving things around a lot easier. But just year one as an example, we put in a giant escalator down the right field line, which people are familiar with from the main concourse. It goes all the way up the top. We put in, we overshot on party rooms year one in 06, and by year 07 we created the Champions Club instead by ripping out some walls and recreating a new space. Fan interests and tastes are constantly evolving. Just this year we added another all-inclusive space, called the Budweiser 703 Club, where that old bow tie bar was out in left field. It's a wonderful space because fans in St. Louis love all-inclusives. And there's just been a number of things, almost like a project a year at least, to cater to the changing fan needs and things. So we'll continue to look really hard at that. And we talked about the stuff that's no fun to do, but there definitely is part of this whole process. We're going to come up with some projects that will definitely be fan facing and that the basic fans will really enjoy. But to your point about capacity, we are sort of larger than a lot of the ballparks in this era of that I've been talking about. I would say the typical number is around 40,000. Some smaller, some larger. We're around 45, and we can get it all the way to 46 with standing room. So, look, our attendance is the bread and butter of the Cardinals franchise. It's what allows us to compete with the big boys, and we're very fortunate because of our great fans. And so we think that having a little bit more seating capacity is beneficial to us. We drive a lot of discounting and a lot of things to get butts in the seats. We believe that's a critical part of what makes the environment better and the exposure to all generations of Cardinals fans, regardless of their, ability to pay for high-priced tickets. So we don't take the philosophy that you have to, make it super exclusive, because we think our just the way that the good seats are closer to the action tends to generate that higher per cap, whereas the further up seats are ripe for discounting and getting people in the ballpark to just enjoy the game.
Is there a number that the average person spends? So, for example, if they buy a $10 ticket or a $15 ticket, you want them in the building, or if their company gives them 4 seats, you want them to show up because they're going to buy 2 sodas, 2 beers, whatever. Is there a rough estimate what each and on a night, if somebody has a ticket and they don't go, that equals money lost? Is there I always try and make this up in my head, but I don't know if there's any studies on it, what the average person spends.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's sort of part of the basic math of running a sports team. It varies, and it actually varies by game. I mean, when the team plays better, actually, the number goes higher. We do a really good per cap on concerts, for example, a little more than baseball. So it kind of depends on the event, even the time of year. Like a cold game, you won't sell beer, but you'll sell hot chocolate and sweatshirts. So the composition can change based on weather, but it depends. But you're talking about $15, $20, $30 is kind of the range of what somebody might spend at a given day on average. That's kind of how we think about the per caps. But then of course, sports service gets their piece, and then the team and their sales tax. So it kind of, the pie gets carved up a fair amount.
Here, I would think when the team's bad, people drink more. I don't know. Maybe, no, you're right. But a bigger crowd, they're going to have more fun. And how about, you said, wanting to be downtown for a long time, just long term, your dad has owned the team for a long time. Is there sort of an idea of the DeWitt family keeping this forever? I feel like this topic you and I have talked about for 30 years, but is the long-term plan to keep it in the family?
Yeah, I mean, it's status quo. I mean, my dad's in good health. He's 82. He's is annoyed by the way we're playing now as he's ever been. Trying to figure out how to get better. We're excited about holding long term and turning this ship back around, and we think we have a plan to do it. So we remain very excited and enthusiastic about Cardinals baseball, and in particular, this great franchise.
Bill, question about attendance, because some of the numbers lately, they'll say it's the lowest attended game in the history of the ballpark, a weekday game, but then I'll see 31-2 or 31-5, which is a really high your low, all-time low, is still a very high number. But what do you make of that right now in terms of those? And those are tickets sold, correct?
Yeah, there's always tickets sold. And so the actual number drops by no-shows but goes up by comps that people, you know what I mean? So, that's the other thing people don't realize. So it tends to be a little, the turnstile tends to be a little less than the announced number, but not by much. But the industry's used that tickets sold number forever. And you can see on a really nice day and a good team in town, I mean, it's the number they announce is the number, So, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Well, I'm just saying when you hear these, stats that come out for everything, but the stat lately has been, I think even last night it said it was the lowest attended weekday game in the history of Busch Stadium 3, and then the number was 31-2. I'm saying that's a pretty high low compared to most teams. Yeah. But how do you view it? Right. You don't want to hit any kind of low, so how do you view that?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's never good to read that, but it's the reality is we have had competitive teams. I mean, that's how crazy. I mean, for 18 plus years, I mean, with a couple down years, but I mean, that's how consistently competitive we've been, that we're only reaching lows 18 plus years into this thing. So, I mean, that's, you can look at both sides of that coin. And you're right. I mean, if we sort of our over-under this year is 3 million tickets sold, it's a chance we may not hit that number. We'll get close if we don't. But, at the end of the day, when you look at the attendance across the league this year, I mean, that'll still be in the top 7 or 8 or, 6 to 8, somewhere in that range. So, it's all relative. We have an incredible fan base, and our goal is my job is to not take that for granted and to give people a great fan experience, game day experience, and a winning ball club.
Would you top 3 million? Is that the projection for this year?
It's probably, that's the over-under in Vegas, I would say,
So you're right around that at this point, right around there?
Yeah, exactly.
Based on season tickets already sold, and then I guess some of that how the season plays out may affect that.
That's right. I mean, we sell, 70+% of our tickets before opening day, and then that last 30 is a function of how the team plays, and maybe your schedule, your promotional work that you do, and various things that play out during the season. But there's a swing factor based on how the team plays that also comes into play.
Bill, we appreciate the extended visit here, and we'll catch up soon.
All right, thanks, Martin. Talk soon.